Following 2002's 28 Days Later and 2007's 28 Weeks Later, the team behind the original film, writer Alex Garland and director Danny Boyle, are reuniting for 28 years later. A movie that took so long to make, we never actually got 28 months later. Damn. But, given the long break between films, you might find yourself in need of a quick refresher on what exactly has happened so far in this post-apocalyptic world, where a virus turns all it infects into rage-fueled monsters. So, let's take a look back at the story so far for 28 days later and counting. In 2002, 3 animal rights activists break into the Cambridge Primate Research Center intending to document and distribute what they presume to be the horrific acts inside. And their suspicions seem confirmed, since it all looks terrible. But when a scientist stumbles upon them, he begs them not to free the chimpanzees being experimented upon, warning that they've been infected and are highly contagious.
The chimps are infected!
Helpfully giving us most of the rules of the series from the get-go, we also learn from this scientist that the infection resides in the blood and saliva. But what exactly are the chimps infected with again?
Rage.
Unfortunately for them, the well-meaning but foolhardy activists don't listen. And all it takes is one chimp and one bite, and we've got ourselves a franchise. And as we quickly learn, not only do you have to watch out for bites, but also these guys will freaking puke blood in your face to spread the infection. Though the 28 Days Later films function as zombie movies in many ways, technically these infected aren't undead zombies. And it is worth noting that when they're not brutally attacking people and showing the ability to run at you at top speed in a way few zombies do, there are some interesting questions about how much humanity they retain. They don't maintain their rage at all times, going docile when they don't have a target in sight. And at one point, we see one of them curiously pause, seeing his own reflection. But, putting all that aside, these suckers are highly dangerous, and that infection rapidly spreads across Britain, where it's first believed to be rioting before it becomes clear it's something much worse. With the infected either killing or spreading the infection to all they encounter, married couple Don and Alice Harris and a small group of others take shelter in a cottage, but soon a desperate young boy they take in inadvertently leads a large horde of infected to them, who get inside. With the infected killing everyone in the house, Don tries to stop Alice from stopping to help the little boy when the infected go for him. But then, when a moment of truth arrives moments later and Alice herself is endangered,
Don! Help us!
Don steps up and this dude just totally ditches his wife to save himself. What an asshole. Then, after some serious cardio to outrun the infected, Don ends up the only survivor from his group. But we'll get back to him. 15 days into the outbreak, all of mainland Britain is quarantined off from the rest of the world, though those left inside don't know that yet. But thanks for the assist, on-screen movie graphics. And by 28 days later, hey now, the area has been effectively destroyed and decimated by the rage virus, which is when we meet Jim, a mild-mannered bicycle courier who was hit by a car and ended up in a coma before the outbreak began. Jim wakes up in a London hospital and he's naked for some reason? Seriously, did someone randomly take his clothes off as the virus spread, or did the hospital just regularly leave coma patients naked? Anyway, an understandably confused and disoriented Jim tries to figure out what's going on and why no one else is around, in a scene that will remind many of Rick Grimes' introduction to the apocalypse, except 28 Days Later came out a year before the Walking Dead comic book began, so they can officially proclaim they were first in this approach to learning that the world has ended. Wandering around a deserted London in scenes that are really impressive for a movie as low budget as 28 Days Later was to so effectively pull off,
Hello!
Jim soon has his first encounters with the rage virus and those who carry it, and nearly meets his end if not for the intervention of survivors Selena and Mark, who show they've gotten pretty good at taking out the infected in the past 4 weeks. After Jim explains he just woke up from a coma, Selena and Mark catch Jim up on all the gossip.
I've got some bad news.
Selena tells Jim that by the time the government tried to evacuate the cities, it was too late, and army blockades were overrun by the infected, with some of the final TV and radio broadcasts ominously saying there were reports of infections in Paris and New York. Overcoming Selena's reluctance and her insisting his family are already dead, Jim gets the others to go with him to his parents' home, where he finds they took their own lives, leaving behind a note for their son to please never wake from his coma. Happy times, huh? The trio spend the night in the house, only to be attacked by infected, and when Mark is bit, Selena, knowing the infection takes hold within seconds, instantly steps up and...
Wait.
Soon after, Jim and Selena, drawn by Christmas lights used as a signal, find two other survivors, taxi driver Frank and his teenage daughter Hannah.
This is great. It's just great.
With no more water available in his building, Frank explains they can't stay there, but he does have a destination in mind, thanks to hearing a recorded radio message from a group of soldiers telling survivors their location and asking for others to come to them.
Just listen.
Salvation is here. The answer to infection is here.
The group set out on the abandoned roads to find the soldiers, with Jim and Selena forging a bond with Frank and Hannah that solidifies thanks to going through both terrifying situations and a few brief, genuinely happy times together. But it's also along the way that the group learns the dark fate of Manchester, which has been lost to fire.
The whole of Manchester, the whole city.
No fire crews to put it out.
Arriving at the coordinates from the message, the group first finds no evidence of any soldiers, leading a frustrated Frank to yell at a crow feeding on a corpse and, oh man, yeah, that's infected blood in the eye. He can't wash that out. As the rage virus overtakes Frank, Jim initially hesitates to kill his new friend, only for Frank to be taken down by soldiers who are in fact still there in hiding. A much smaller group than expected, the soldiers who have blockaded themselves in an abandoned mansion are led by Major Henry West, who informs Jim, Selena, and Hannah they have food and hot water before going on to explain to Jim the protective measures they've put into place and that their real job is to rebuild society.
Secondary to protection, our real job is to rebuild. Start again.
Oh yeah, they've chained up one of their own men, Mailer, who got infected because West wants to know how long it takes for the infected to starve to death. Jim, Selena, and Hannah quickly begin to feel that despite their supposed newfound military protection, the vibes are off at this place, and that feeling is soon confirmed when West reveals to Jim the actual vile plan he has formulated with his men and what the so-called answer to infection on his recording really is.
I promised them women.
Yeah, turns out these guys are a bunch of disgusting rapists who intend to turn Selena and even Hannah, a literal child, into sex slaves under the pretense of repopulation. But really, it's just because they're absolute trash people. Jim attempts to flee with Selena and Hannah, assisted by Farrell, the only one of West's men not on board with the soldiers' plans, but they are intercepted and both Jim and Farrell are taken prisoner and ordered to be executed. While they're locked up together, Farrell tells Jim he doesn't believe the stories that the virus spread to the rest of the world and thinks something happened to England specifically.
They quarantined us.
Taken outside, beyond the barricades, Farrell is killed by the soldiers, but Jim manages to escape by hiding amongst a pile of the dead, with soldiers making the assumption that he won't last long out among the infected. Oh, you guys are gonna regret that. As Jim runs through the woods, he trips and falls, which is when he spots something above, an airplane, indicating Farrell was right that other parts of the world are still functioning. Back in the house, well, look, there's no way to sugarcoat how awful things are, as the soldiers want Selena and Hannah to put dresses on as part of their perverted plans for them, which leads Selena to give Hannah Valium as a grim act of kindness.
Are you trying to kill me?
No, sweetheart. I'm making you not care.
But Jim is now determined to rescue them, sounding a siren to draw out West and one of the other men, the latter of whom he kills, with the siren also drawing the infected, some of them as naked as Jim was when we met him, to the mansion. Jim then frees Mailer, ensuring the soldiers inside will have to deal with the infected, while he continues inside himself to save the girls. At the same time, Hannah, feeling the effects of the Valium, awesomely tells it like it is to a couple of her captors about why some of the soldiers haven't come back.
They're dead. And you're gonna be next.
But, on the downside, the Valium causes her to wander off from Selena as chaos breaks out in the mansion. That chaos is caused both by Mailer, who infects one of the soldiers, and by Jim, who has gone rather primal and lethal at this point as he unlocks his inner Rambo. In fact, Jim is so much in a rather scary zone to complete his mission that when he saves Selena, she first assumes he's infected thanks to how brutally he attacks the soldier holding her hostage, which makes sense because, whoa, Jim, easy. Jim convinces Selena he's okay, and then does the same with Hannah, who has made her way back to her friends, but briefly thinks she needs to save Selena from Jim because it looked like Jim was biting her.
Kissing her.
But then the three have to deal with a final boss in the form of West, who is waiting for them in their car, where he shoots Jim, which causes Hannah to deal with this scumbag herself, as she drives West right into the waiting arms of Malin. With Jim bleeding to death, Hannah then has to decide what to do when the gates to the driveway are locked as she drives up to them, getting some encouragement from Jim in the matter. And we then pick up another 28 days later after Selena managed to save Jim, the two of them and Hannah now at a remote cottage on the water, no, not the same one Don and Alice were at, as nearby the infected seem to be finally dying, no longer able to move. Jim, Selena, and Hannah prepare a huge cloth banner attempting to signal the surveillance planes they have spotted flying by, unfurling the message, hello, to their likely rescuers, and leaving these three survivors on a hopeful note.
Do you think he saw us this time?
With the infected all apparently dead and the virus having not gone airborne nor having crossed into further species, 11 weeks after the outbreak began, an American-led NATO force enters London, and by 18 weeks, mainland Britain is declared free of infection. And that's it. Everything's great moving forward.
Too easy.
Okay, no, not exactly, because moving rather quickly, arguably far too quickly, after 24 weeks, reconstruction begins in Britain, and at 28 weeks later, among a new group of arrivals coming back into the country are sister and brother Tammy and Andy, whose presence worries Chief Medical Officer Major Scarlett Levy, who is concerned about bringing children back into the area so soon. Tammy and Andy are reunited with their father, who is none other than good old Don. The kids were traveling abroad when the outbreak began, but now the family are living together on the Isle of Dogs, now known as District 1, the first designated safe area for residents as Britain rebuilds. Working as a caretaker in District 1, Don tells the kids they can't go back to their old home outside the safe zone, and then answers the questions his kids have about what exactly happened to their mother, using a lie to cover his cowardice.
I couldn't do anything.
With Andy distraught about not even having a photo or any other items to remember Alice by, Tammy sneaks the two of them out of District 1, though they are spotted leaving by U.S. Army sniper Doyle. At their old home, Andy is able to get the photo he wants of him and Alice, but gets a huge shock when he discovers someone hiding in one of the rooms, and it turns out to be Alice herself, who is happy to see him, yet also a bit, well, overzealous in her affection.
You're hurting me!
Their reunion is interrupted by the arrival of the troops Doyle called in, including his helicopter pilot pal Flynn, who takes the kids back to District 1 along with Alice. At the military base, Don comes to get his kids, and now has to answer a few questions he wasn't prepared for.
You said you saw her die.
What?
You said you saw her die!
Alice seems understandably shell-shocked, but otherwise looks relatively normal, minus that gnarly red mark in the white of her eye. But a blood sample Scarlett takes reveals the truth.
There's no question, sir. She has the virus.
Despite her infection, Alice is somehow not showing the rage virus symptoms, which Scarlett speculates may be due to a genetic abnormality. She's not technically immune though, because the virus is in her blood, which means she is still a carrier. Scarlett tries to argue that this makes Alice incredibly valuable, since she could be the key to a cure, but her superior, General Stone, simply wants to kill Alice due to the risk of her passing on the virus.
We need some time to study her. We need to run some tests.
Run tests on a corpse, Major.
But the situation is taken out of their hands by Don, who goes to have what was always going to be a very awkward reunion with the woman he left to die. When the incredibly forgiving Alice tells Don she still loves him, he goes in for a kiss and, well, look at that saliva sharing. That's not going to be good for anybody. And it's not because Don quickly is overcome by the full rage virus and attacks and kills Alice. Oh geez. There's more eye gouging. More like 28 eye gouges later. Am I right? Real sorry about that joke. I had to. It's right here in the script. Let loose in the military base, Don begins spreading the infection to others, leading Stone to execute a code red.
Execute. Code red.
with his soldiers attempting to contain the outbreak, but willing to go much further if it's deemed necessary. When Tammy and Andy are attacked by one of the infected, they are saved by Scarlett, who believes that with Alice dead, it's possible her children could be the key to a cure if they have the same genetic abnormality as their mother. With the residents corralled together by the military, Andy ends up getting separated from Scarlett and Tammy, which is when his rage-infected dad shows up, getting into the containment area and spreading the infection, causing a panicked stampede. When everyone breaks out of the garage they were locked in, the initial order is to try and target the infected. Oh hey, Jeremy Renner playing a guy who's a great shot. Seems like a good fit for some reason. Jesus. But as the situation escalates and it becomes nearly impossible to tell who's infected and who's not, Stone makes a grim decision.
Shoot everything. Targets are now free.
Which is an order Doyle first goes along with before deciding it's a bridge too far for him after he spots young Andy running for safety. After Andy finds Tammy, Scarlett, and a few other survivors who have hidden during the massacre, Doyle joins them, revealing he's abandoned his post and offering to help them escape. Thanks to a heads up from Flynn, Doyle learns that District 1 will now be firebombed to try and ensure containment.
They're firebombing all of District 1.
With Flynn telling him Doyle can pick him up if he makes it to Regent's Park. As they flee, some of their group are killed by a sniper who also shoots Scarlett in the leg before Flynn manages to take him out. Flynn, Tammy, Andy, Scarlett, and a panicky survivor named Sam then make it into a tunnel just in time to escape the firebomb. However, some of the infected also make it out in time and get into London, including Don. Waiting for Flynn at Regent's Park, the kids then talk about what's become of both of their parents.
Do you think Mum's still alive?
Not this time.
While Scarlett tells Doyle why Tammy and Andy are potentially so important and need to be saved at all costs.
Their lives are far more valuable than mine.
Flynn shows up in his chopper just as a group of infected arrive as well, but Flynn is none too happy to learn Doyle has several people with him he neglected to mention, refusing to take anyone but Doyle and saying they'll all be shot if he comes back to the base with civilians. Doyle tells him not to take them to the base at all, that the kids need to be taken over the English Channel. But in the midst of this argument, Panicky Sam panics and grabs onto the helicopter, which doesn't go so hot for him. Well, at least he gets a front row seat as Flynn pulls this pretty rad move with the helicopter against the infected. With Doyle, Scarlett, and the kids forced to run from more of the infected, Flynn tells Doyle he has one more shot for a pickup at Wembley Stadium, but again tells him to ditch the others. The group run through the streets of London only to nearly be killed by nerve gas the military has released against the infected. A car they take refuge in saves them from the gas. Oh, shit, more blood puke. Ugh. Then the car won't start, and seeing soldiers approaching with flamethrowers, Doyle gets out to help push the car for a jump start, sacrificing himself in the process. And letting us see what happens when Hawkeye does his best Human Torch impression. With their car under attack from a helicopter, Scarlett drives them straight into a London Underground station, and then things get extra creepy as they descend into the dark tunnels below, where the only way to see where they're going, including dodging bodies, is by Scarlett using Doyle's sniper rifle sight. When the kids trip down the escalator in the dark, Andy is once more separated from Tammy and Scarlett, which is when Don shows up and brutally kills Scarlett by beating her to death with the sniper rifle. The rage-fueled Don then finds Andy and attacks him, biting him in the process, only for Tammy to shoot and kill her father. Though Andy initially runs away in despair over his bite, when Tammy catches up to him, she learns he is indeed like their mother. He's now carrying the virus, but he is not overcome by the accompanying rage.
Am I one of them?
No.
The siblings then walk through the subway tunnels to Wembley Stadium, where Flynn is waiting. Tammy tells Flynn that Doyle didn't make it, but shields Andy's infection, convincing Flynn to take them to safety. As Flynn takes them to parts unknown, Tammy and Andy then get a look at the even further destroyed Britain, as we then jump to, you guessed it, 28 days later, where we see Flynn's helicopter sitting, seemingly abandoned, as a distress call comes in through the radio in French. We don't know where Flynn, Tammy, or Andy ended up, and the helicopter certainly looks worse for wear, but then we see a group of infected running through the streets towards what is revealed to be the Eiffel Tower, meaning this time, the infection really has spread to Paris and likely beyond into more of Europe. 28 years later will introduce us to a new set of characters, and it remains to be seen what the state of the world is in the film. Has all of Earth fallen to the rage virus, or did the quarantine hold out anywhere? And even without Andy and Tammy in the film, will we learn about any others who the virus doesn't affect in a similar manner? The movie kicks off a planned new trilogy with the second installment, 28 years later, The Bone Temple, directed by Nia DaCosta, and opening in 2026, already having been filmed as well. And while Cillian Murphy is not expected to return as Jim in the first new film, Danny Boyle did recently promise at CinemaCon we would see him again eventually, with the winking comment, like all good things in life, you may have to wait a little while for him to make his appearance. So, does that mean he's in The Bone Temple? We'll have to see, but it sure sounds likely. Luckily, we shouldn't have to wait 28 years for the answer. Let us know how excited you are for 28 years later and for, zombies all the time, I guess. Be sure to subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.